Well, good morning, Core Math 2 students. This is Week 1 Lesson 1, and it is about proportions. So before we left school, we were talking about some scale factors and keeping things in proportion with one another. So one of the examples that we're going to take a look at today is working on solving proportions for x. And you might remember doing this in past math classes. And so what we see here is one fraction or one ratio equal to another fraction or ratio. And so the best way to solve any proportion in math class is to cross multiply and divide. Cross multiply and divide. So for us to start by cross multiplying, we need to make sure that we find a diagonal where we know both parts or both numbers. We wouldn't want to take x times 4 because we obviously don't know what x is. So we start with taking 3 times 10. 3 times 10 is 30. And then the second step, the and divide part, is to divide by the third and final number. That would be the 4 is what we are going to divide by. So 30 divided by 4. And that's what's going to tell us exactly what x must be to make this a true equation or a true proportion. So 30 divided by 4, we do get a decimal, we get 7.5, and that is perfectly okay. X equals 7.5. So what this is telling us is that if we were looking at these fractions, 3 divided by 7.5 is the exact same ratio as 4 divided by 10. So let's try another example. You might find some shortcuts along the way. Example number 2 down below. 10 over 9 is equal to the ratio x over 18. So you can always cross multiply and divide. But there are other ways of looking at the problem. So let's do it both ways. 10 times 18, that's the crossing way that we can do. 10 times 18 is 180. And then we would lastly divide by the third number we have, the 9. And that would tell us exactly what the x is. So x here is 20. So this is saying that, yep, 10 over 9 is the exact same ratio as 20 over 18. Now, as I mentioned, there is another way of looking at this. The original problem, 10 over 9 equaled x over 18. Along the bottom two numbers here, you might notice that 9 could turn into 18 if we multiplied by 2. Well, to be a proportion or to have these ratios equal, on the top, if we take 10 times 2, that would give us the value of x. X would have to be 20. And that was what we got with the cross multiplying and dividing. So there are many, many ways of looking at these proportions. The last example, example 3, this is the type that you might run into on Delta Math from time to time, where one of the ratios happens to be negative. This does occur, so you might be wondering, okay, well, where does the negative come into play? Well, we're going to start with that cross multiplying and dividing again. So the 3 on the bottom, I'm going to treat that as a positive 3. The negative, I'm going to treat the top as a negative and not worry about the negative out in front. So I'm going to start by taking positive 3 times 17. And if you use a calculator, 3 times 17 is 51. Then lastly, I'm going to divide by our other number, which we've determined to be negative 2. And that's what's going to give me the value of x. So 51 divided by negative 2 is negative 25.5 for the value of x. So what this is telling us is that the ratio, negative 2/3, wherever the negative is equal to the ratio of negative 17 over 25.5. So there's only one negative in both places, and it turned out that the x value had to be negative to make sure it was equal to the starting ratio. And that's a 4.5-minute video. Head on over to Delta Math and work on some practice problems. Thank you and have a great day.